Yeah. Hi guys, good evening. In the previous class, we completed discussion related to Spring Boot profiles concept, right? What is the purpose of profiles in the Spring Boot? Right. In the project, multiple environments will be available. Changing the properties for every environment multiple times is very difficult. To overcome that problem, we are going for profiles. So every environment will have one profile and we need to activate that particular profile when we are deploying our application. So do you know how to activate a profile? Spring.profiles.active is equal to profile name. If I give the profile name as a dev, it will load the dev properties file to deploy our application. If I give UAT profile, it will load to deploy our application. Good. Now, from today, we are going to understand what is Spring Web MVC and how to develop a web application by using Spring, right? So here, concentrate. Spring Web MVC, it is one module in Spring framework to develop web applications. WebMVC is one module. It is used to develop web applications. Now, here, Spring WebMVC not only for web application development, even we can develop RESTful services also. Distributed applications also can be developed by using this web application. Now, WebMVC module simplified web development, web application development. Here there are several advantages available when you go for WebMVC. In the servlets also, we developed web application. But the problem in the servlet, we need to write each and everything on our own. We need to capture form data. We need to represent the form data in the form of object. So here, what are the challenges are there in the servlet? Those challenges are resolved in the Spring WebMVC. It is one module in the Spring framework to develop web application. WebMVC module simplified web application development process. Now there are several advantages available. So what are the advantages in the WebMVC? The first advantage in the WebMVC is it is supporting form binding. It is supporting form binding. That means whenever you submit a form data will be binded to your Java object. You no need to write request.get parameter to capture form data. In the servlets, when we submit a form, we need to capture the data from the form by using request.get parameter. But in the WebMVC, do I need to write the logic to capture form data? Not required. Form binding is inbuilt functionality in the Spring WebMVC. And the second advantage is flexibility in form binding. We are having flexibility in the form binding. If the data coming from the web to, from UI to controller. When the data is coming, everything will come as a string. But in my object, some variables are string type, some variables are number type, some variables are Boolean type, some variables are date type. Automatically, this Spring WebMVC will convert the data into corresponding data type. You no need to convert string to integer, string to long. Whenever we submit the form from the UI, everything will come as a string only. We need to write the logic to convert phone number from string to long type. We need to convert the date of birth from string to date type, right? So we no need to do that conversion when we go for WebMVC. It is having form binding and we are having flexibility in the form binding. And third advantage here, is form data to, form binding already completed. So flexibility in the form binding is available. Multiple presentation technology support. multiple presentation technologies. Here, not only JSP, you can use either JSP or time leaf also as a presentation technology. You can go for time leaf or you can go for JSP as a presentation technology. So in the servlet, we can use only JSP as a presentation technology. But in the Spring Web MVC, not only JSP, you can go for time leaf also as a presentation technology. So like this, there are several advantages available with the Web MVC. And the next one is form tag library. Here it provided some tag library to develop our forms easily. In my form, I want to display a drop down. Drop down data is coming from the database. Okay guys, I want to display some checkboxes. The checkboxes data coming from the database. So here we have form tag library concept. It is used to simplify your forms development. Suppose for example, I want to display countries in the drop down in the registration page. Countries data available in the database table. Database table data I want to display in the application drop down, right? We no need to write much logic for that. There are some tags which are provided by Spring Form Tag Library. By using this form tag library, we can simplify our forms development. Like this, there are several advantages available with the WebMVC module. By using this WebMVC module, we can develop web application. This WebMVC module simplified web application development process. What are the advantages with the WebMVC module? Form binding logic is available. What is the meaning of form binding? Form data will be binded to your Java object. Java object data can be binded to form. Form data can be binded to Java object. And we are having flexibility in the form binding. It will take care of type conversion. Phone number we entered in the form. When you submit, that phone number will go as a string. But in my user class, phone number is a long data type. String to long conversion is required. That we no need to do. That will be taken care by WebMVC module, right? And we are having support for multiple presentation technology. If you want to go with JSP, you can use JSP as a presentation technology. If you want to go with time leaf as a presentation technology, you can use that. Spring WebMVC supports for multiple presentation technologies. And here we are having form tag library. Ready-made tags available. Ready-made tags support. To display drop downs, to display checkboxes, to display radio button, there are some ready-made tags available. By using the tags given by form tag library, simply we can develop our form with dynamic data. My country names should come from the database table. My state names should come from the database table. My course names should come from the database table. So like that, you can bind your data to the form fields by using form tag library available in the WebMVC. Got it? Now here, we can use WebMVC in the Spring Boot. Okay, note, to develop web application using Spring Boot, to develop web application using Spring Boot, we need to add below starter in the form.xml. We need to add below starter in form.xml. That is Spring Boot starter web. Spring Boot starter web dependency we need to add in order to develop a web application by using Spring Boot. Spring Boot starter web dependency available. So that means whenever you add this starter, you will get the Spring WebMVC support to develop a web application by using Spring Boot. Whenever we add this Spring Boot starter web, the above starter provides support. The above starter provides support for below things. Okay, you can develop MVC based web application, MVC based web applications, and you can develop RESTful services, web services you can develop, and it is going to provide embedded container. That is going to be Tomcat by default. Whenever you add this web starter dependency in the pom.xml, then it is going to give you MVC, Spring MVCs, Web MVC based web application development support, and it will support for developing RESTful services, and it is going to provide embedded container. What is the meaning of embedded container? You will get a server also to run your boot web application. You no need to download the Tomcat. You no need to install anything to develop your web and to run your web application. Just you need to add web starter. When you add the web starter, the embedded container will come. That is a Tomcat server. And you can develop REST APIs also by using this web starter. And you can develop web applications with the Spring Web MVC by using this starter. Got it? Now here we need to understand Spring Web MVC architecture. We need to understand Spring Web MVC architecture. When we are talking about Web MVC architecture, the first thing we need to talk about dispatcher servlet. What is that, guys? Dispatcher servlet. And the second one is handler mapper. Handler mapper. And the third one is controller. And the fourth one is model and view object. And the fifth one is view resolver. And the sixth one is view component. So if you want to develop a web application by using Web MVC, then you need to understand what is dispatcher servlet, what is handler mapper, what is controller, what is model and view, and what is view resolver, and what is view. To understand the internal process of our Spring Web MVC, we need to discuss this architecture. Okay, guys. Now first, let me tell you, controller. Controller is a class which is responsible to handle your request and your response. When I click on the login button, login controller will execute. It will take your credentials. It will verify your credentials are valid or not. If valid, login success. If invalid, login failure. So here, controller is a class. Controller. It is responsible to handle request and response. When user click on some button, controller will be called, right? So your UI buttons, UI actions will be mapped to controller. What is the controller in the Web MVC? In the advanced Java, we discussed servlets, right? From now onwards, we are not going to create the servlet. We are going to create a controller. What is the meaning of controller? Excuse me. Controller is a class, a Java class, which is responsible to handle request and response. Now, in the project, multiple controllers will be available, and in one controller, multiple methods also will be available. So in my controller, login method available, register method is available, forgot password method available, dashboard method available, report method is available. Like that, in our project, we can create multiple controller classes. In every controller, we can write multiple methods also. When you click some button, when you click some hyperlink, the request will go from the UI to backend controller. Controller will take the request coming from the UI. Controller will do some processing. Controller will send the response back to the UI. So remember, controller is a Java class which is responsible to handle request and response. Good. And the next one. Here, model and view available, view resolver available, view available, dispatcher servlet available, handler mapper is available. Now, let's see what is dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet is called as a framework servlet. Dispatcher servlet is called as a framework servlet. This is also called as front controller. Dispatcher servlet is called as a front controller. Now, in our project, let's take a simple example. Let us take a simple example. In our institute building, there are so many doors available. But there are so many doors available for each room. But at the entrance, one main gate is available. Anybody who want to go for first floor room or second floor room or third floor room should come from the main gate only, and they have to leave from the main gate only. That main gate is called as a front controller. Okay. Anybody who want to, in this building 3 floors available, in each floor one office is available, in one office multiple rooms are available, multiple doors are available. Anybody who want to come into the second floor, what they need to do? Can they directly jump and come here? No. What they need to do? They should come from the main gate. They will inquire for a course. After their inquiry is completed, again they will go down. They will exit from the building through the main gate only. Anybody who is coming inside, who is going outside, should cross that main gate. Should cross that main gate. Similarly, in our application, multiple controller classes will be available and multiple methods will be available in the controller. But whenever user send a request, dispatcher servlet will be available. Dispatcher servlet is called as a front controller in the Spring Web MVC. Every request which is coming to our application should come through the dispatcher servlet. Any response which is going from our application should go through dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet is called as a front controller available in our application. Sir, what is the duty of this dispatcher servlet in the Web MVC? Dispatcher servlet is responsible to perform pre-processing and post-processing of a request. What is the responsibility of the dispatcher servlet? It is responsible to perform pre-processing and post-processing of a request. So we are saying that when you submit the form data will be stored into Java object. That Java object will be given to our controller method. That is called pre-processing. So before request comes to our controller, that request will be handled by dispatcher servlet. Are you guys able to follow me? What is the dispatcher servlet here? What is the dispatcher servlet? Dispatcher servlet is called as a framework servlet. It is also called as a front controller. What is the responsibility of the dispatcher servlet? Dispatcher servlet is responsible to perform pre-processing and post-processing. Pre-processing and post-processing. Right. What is the meaning of pre-processing? Taking the request, doing some operation on the request, then it will give the request to the actual controller. What controller will do? Controller will execute the request processing logic. Controller will give some response. Who will send the response to the client? My controller send the response to the client, or dispatcher servlet will send the response to client? Dispatcher servlet will send the response to the client. So dispatcher servlet is a framework servlet. It is called as a front controller. That is a main gate in our application. So in my application, multiple controllers will be available. Multiple methods will be available. Any request which should come to my controller, first it should go to dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet will perform pre-processing. Then it will send the request to our controller. Our controller will execute some request logic. Controller will give some response. That response is going to the client or response is going to dispatcher? Response is going to dispatcher servlet. Then dispatcher servlet will send the response to the client. Are you guys getting my point? Yes. What is the dispatcher servlet? Come on. Dispatcher servlet is acting as a front controller. Dispatcher servlet acting as a front controller. What is the duty of the dispatcher servlet? Performing the pre-processing and post-processing. Okay. Now, whenever client performs some operation on the application, browser will send a request to our application. Right? User is clicking on one button. When user click on the button, the request is coming to our application. Who will take that request first? Request will go to controller directly or request will go to dispatcher servlet? Request will go to dispatcher servlet. Request will go to dispatcher servlet. Now, observe. Whenever request comes to dispatcher servlet, that dispatcher servlet don't know which controller is responsible to handle that request. User may click on the login button. User may click on the register button, forgot password, anything. User can do any operation. Now here, in our project, multiple controllers will be available. Which controller, in that controller, which method is responsible to handle that request? Dispatcher servlet don't know. Then what the dispatcher servlet will do is, dispatcher servlet will give the request to handler mapping. What is that? Handler mapping. Whenever the request is received by dispatcher servlet will give that request to handler mapping. This handler mapping is responsible to identify which request should be handled by which controller. Are you guys able to follow me? In my project, there are multiple controllers available. User click on the login button. Login button request should be handled by which controller. In that controller, which method should handle that request? That will be identified by handler mapper. Handler mapper is responsible to identify controller class to handle the request. Handler mapper responsible to handle request handler class. Request handler class nothing but controller class. So request handler class nothing but controller. Whenever user send a request will be received by the dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet will give the request to handler mapper. What that handler mapper will do? It will scan this request /login URL pattern. That request should be handled by which controller. That dispatcher servlet is giving the request to handler mapper. Handler mapper will identify the controller class to process the request. Then handler mapper will give that controller details to dispatcher servlet. Then dispatcher servlet will go to controller class, will call the controller method. Dispatcher servlet will go to controller class, will call that controller method. What our controller will do? It will execute some logic. It may talk to service. It may talk to DAO. Some classes will be available. Once our request processing is completed, controller will give data back to dispatcher. What data we need to send in the response? That data will be sent from controller to dispatcher servlet. Are you guys clear with my point? Yes, tell me, what is the dispatcher servlet? What is a handler? What is a controller? Dispatcher servlet is called as a front controller. What is the duty of the dispatcher servlet? It is responsible to perform pre-processing and post-processing. And what is a handler mapper? Handler mapper is responsible to identify request handler. What is the meaning of identifying the request handler? Identifying the controller class to handle that request. Which class is responsible to handle that request will be identified by handler mapper. After identifying the controller, handler mapper will give controller data to the dispatcher servlet. Then what the dispatcher servlet will do? It will go to that controller. It will call the controller method. What is the responsibility of the controller? Java class, which is responsible to handle the request and response. After handling the request and response, controller will call the service method. Service method will call the DAO method. DAO will talk to database. That processing will be available. Now here, our controller class will talk to service class. Our service class will talk to DAO class. That process will be there. Controller will execute the logic. Controller will return model and view object to DS. DS is nothing but our dispatcher servlet. Controller class will execute that request and controller will return model and view object to the dispatcher servlet. What is a model? Model represents data in key value format. Model will represent data in the key value format. What is view? View is called as logical file name. That means what is your presentation file? Which page should be rendered in the presentation, that will be represented by view. Model and view. Model represents data in key value format. View represents logical file name. Controller will tell just file name, login, register, forgot password, dashboard. That's it. Controller don't know what is presentation technology in the project. It can be JSP presentation logic or it can be time leap presentation logic. My controller don't know what is my presentation technology in the project. Controller will execute the request and the controller will return model and view. This is the data, customer data. I want to render customer data in the customer page. What is that customer page? Is it a JSP page or is it a time leap page? My controller don't know. Controllers are loosely coupled with the presentation technology. So as the controllers are loosely coupled with the presentation technology, Spring MVC supporting for multiple presentation technology. Controller will give the data. You can display that data by using JSP page or you can display the data by using time leap page also. Are you guys clear? Right. What is the controller? What is the responsibility of the controller? Come on. What is the controller? What is the responsibility of the controller? Controller is a Java class which is responsible to handle request and response. What controller will do? It will take the request. It will take the request and it will return model and view object to dispatcher servlet. Right here, what is this model and view? Model represents data in the key value format. View represents logical file name. Note, controller don't know. Controllers are loosely coupled with presentation technology. Controllers are loosely coupled with the presentation technology. What is the meaning of that? Controller don't know what is our presentation technology. Some people will use JSP as presentation. Some people will use time leap as a presentation. Controller will tell This is the data. This data should be displayed in this file. That file can be JSP or that file can be time leaf also. Able to follow me? Right. Now, observe. Here I'm having assume that this is my application. This diagram is called as Spring MVC architecture diagram. This diagram is called as Spring MVC architecture diagram. When user send a request, who is receiving that request? The request is receiving by dispatcher servlet. Then what is the first step that dispatcher servlet is doing? Dispatcher servlet giving the request to handler mapper. What is the responsibility of the handler mapper? Handler mapper is identifying which controller should handle that request. After identifying that, handler mapper will give controller details to the dispatcher. Then dispatcher servlet will call that controller class method. Then controller will execute the logic. Controller will return model and view object to the dispatcher. What is there in the model? What will be there in the model? Model contains the data in the form of key and value. What is the view? Logical file name. Does that controller know that view is a JSP? No. Does it know that view is a time leaf? No. Controllers are loosely coupled with the presentation technology. Now after returning model and view object, dispatcher servlet received model. It contains the data in the key value. View represents logical file name. Then dispatcher servlet should understand I have a data, I know the file name, but that file is a JSP or time leaf. It has to identify. To identify presentation file, which technology is there in the project for the presentation, dispatcher servlet will talk to one more component called view resolver. It will talk to a component called view resolver. View resolver is responsible to identify where is the view file in the project, what is the view technology in the project. View nothing but presentation. View resolver to identify the technology of the presentation and where that presentation file is available in the project. Able to follow me? Good. Now, view resolver. View resolver to identify presentation file location and presentation file technology. Whether it is a JSP or time leaf, that will be identified by view resolver. After identifying the presentation file and presentation technology, view resolver will go and give the information to dispatcher servlet. Initially, dispatcher servlet will give logical file name to the view resolver. View resolver will identify where is that view file, what is that view file. View resolver will identify, view resolver will give that view information to the dispatcher servlet. After giving view information to the dispatcher servlet, finally dispatcher servlet will send model data to the view component. That view component will render model data. That is the output. What is the output we want to send to the user? That output will be rendered. Rendered nothing but displaying, right? It is going to render that model data on the view component. After rendering, this view component will give the view page data to dispatcher servlet. Finally, dispatcher servlet will take that data, will prepare a response and will send the response to the client. Are you guys clear? So here HTTP request is available, HTTP response is available. Client will send a request to our application. Our application will process that request, will send the response back to client. But here how the request is getting processed? several components are involved in the Spring Web MVC to process the request. What are the components involved here? What is the first one? What is the first one? The first one is a dispatcher servlet. What is the second one? Handler mapper. Third one, controller. Fourth one, model and view. Fifth one, view resolver. Sixth one, view component. What is the dispatcher servlet? Dispatcher servlet is called as a front controller. What is the responsibility of the dispatcher servlet? It is responsible to take the request and give the response. It is responsible to perform pre-processing and post-processing of request. For every request, pre-processing and post-processing will done by our dispatcher servlet. The next one, what is a handler mapper? What is the handler mapper? Handler mapper is responsible to identify request handler class. Request handler class is also called as controller class. Okay, which request should be handled by which controller, that will be identified by handler mapper. Then what is a controller? What is a controller? Controller is a Java class which is responsible to handle request and response. Controller will return model and view object to dispatcher servlet. What is a model? What is the model? Model represents data in the key value format. What is view? View is a logical file name. Controllers are loosely coupled with the presentation technology. Then here, what is the view resolver? What is the view resolver? View resolver used to identify presentation file location and technology. And finally, we have a view component. It is responsible to render model data in view file. It is responsible to render model data in the view file. Now, look at the diagram. One, two, three, four, you can see which component is executing at what time and what is the responsibility of the each component. क्या है यार, क्या करते रहते हैं लोग? Fine guys, are you able to understand MVC architecture? Yes, can you tell me what is a Spring Web MVC? What is Spring Web MVC? It is one module in the framework to develop web applications. Not only web applications, it is even can be used to develop REST distributed applications also. What are the advantages with the web MVC? The advantage is form binding. What is the meaning of form binding? Form data will be stored to object. Object data can be displayed in the form. Right. Next advantage, flexibility in the form binding. What is the flexibility meaning? Typecasting. Your form data will be converted to respective data type. And third advantage, here it is supporting for multiple presentation technology, JSP and timely. Next one, ready-made tag support is available, form tag library. Next one, to develop web application using Spring Boot, we need to add below starter in the form.xml. What is that starter? Spring Boot starter web. So it is a form starter in the boot. Whenever you add this form starter, you will get all the support to develop web application, and you will also get a server also. That server is called as a embedded server. The above starter provides support for below things. MVC based web applications will be available, can be developed. RESTful services can be developed. Embedded container also we are going to get. Now, coming to MVC architecture. What are the components involved in this architecture? First one is dispatcher servlet. Second one is handler mapper. Third one is controller. Fourth one, model and view. Fifth one, view resolver. Sixth one, view component. Check it here. Whenever user send a request, the request will be received by dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet is called as a front controller that is responsible to handle request and response. It will perform pre-processing and post-processing of a request. Then dispatcher servlet will give the request information to handler mapper. Handler mapper will identify which controller should handle the request and which method in that controller. Handler mapper will give controller details to the dispatcher servlet. Handler mapper will give controller details to the dispatcher servlet. Then what the dispatcher servlet will do? What the dispatcher servlet will do? Dispatcher servlet will call the controller class method. Controller class method will execute the logic. It may talk to service. Service will talk to DAO. DAO will talk to database. That process will happen. Finally, my controller is going to return model and view object to the dispatcher servlet. What is the meaning of model and view object? What data should be displayed, where that data should be displayed. That will be represented by model and view object. Model represents data in the form of key value. View represents a file name. What is the presentation file? To display the response. Model and view will be given to dispatcher servlet. Then what the dispatcher servlet will do? It will take the view name. It will give the view name to view resolver. What is the responsibility of the view resolver? What is the responsibility of the view resolver? To identify where our file is available to display what is the technology used to develop that file. It will identify the presentation file details, will give it to dispatcher servlet. Then dispatcher servlet will give the data to the view component. View component will render model data on the view file, will give to dispatcher. Finally, what the dispatcher will do? It will send the response back to client. So this is called Spring Web MVC architecture. Whenever you send a request for the web application in the Spring, then your request processing will happen like this. Got it? In this diagram, observe, we no need to develop dispatcher servlet. It is already provided by the framework. Do we need to develop the dispatcher, or it is already provided by the web MVC? Already provided by web MVC. We no need to develop a handler mapper. That is also already given by the web MVC. We need to develop controller. We need to develop controller. Take the request, give the model and view. View resolver, do I need to develop? That also given by framework. Do I need to develop a view? No. In this whole diagram, what is our responsibility? We only need to develop the controller classes. What is the purpose of controller? It will take the request and it will give the response in the form of model and view. Model represents data, view represents logical file name. Got it? But we need to understand internally how our request is executing. Request will go to dispatcher, dispatcher will go to handler mapper, handler will identify the controller, give to dispatcher. Dispatcher will go to controller, call the controller method. Controller will execute the logic, will return the model and view object. Then dispatcher will take the view name, give to view resolver. View resolver will identify presentation file. Got it? Now dispatcher servlet will give that presentation file to view component. View component will render model data on the view file, will give back to dispatcher. Who will send the final response to client? Dispatcher servlet. So before request is processing, before response is sending, dispatcher will be available there. It is a front controller. Are you clear with the architecture? Yes. Now, in this diagram, we are responsible to develop only controller. Remaining things will be taken care by WebMVC. Developing first WebMVC application. Developing first application by using Spring Web MVC. Building first Spring Web MVC app with a boot, or building first web app. Building first web app with a Spring Boot. Spring Boot internally using Web MVC concept only to develop this. Now here, create Spring Starter project. Create Spring Starter project with below dependencies. Create Spring Starter project with below dependencies. The first dependency, that is Spring Boot Starter Web. Spring Boot Starter Web dependency we need to take. And second dependency I'm taking as Spring Boot Dev Tools. What is the second dependency I'm using? Spring Boot Dev Tools. Third dependency, Tomcat Embed Jasper. Third dependency I'm taking as a Tomcat Embed Jasper. Here, to develop a web application with the boot, we need a web starter. Okay, that web starter is providing the support for web application development as well as REST API development, and it is also providing Tomcat as a embedded server. You no need to download and install the server to run your application. If you have web starter, that is sufficient. If you have a web starter, that is sufficient. And the next one, Spring Boot Dev Tools. Dev Tools is a dependency which is used to restart your server when you make some changes in the code. It is a web application, will run in a server. You will make some changes. Latest code should be deployed in the server. Your server should be restarted when you make some changes in the code. For that, I am going for Dev Tools. Okay, guys. And the next one, actually, Spring main intention, not JSP for the presentation. Spring people don't like that JSP. Spring people supports time leaf. Time leaf is much faster than JSP. When you compare time leaf and JSP, definitely I will vote for time leaf because it is very faster than the JSP. That's why Spring people are not able to compile the JSP files directly. They removed support for the JSP. If you want to use JSP in the Spring Boot, then you need to add Tomcat Embed Jasper. If you don't add this dependency, JSP files will not work in the boot web application. If you are going for time leaf, then this dependency not required. If you are using only JSP for the presentation, then this dependency is required. Tomcat Embed Jasper. When to use the dependency? If you are using JSP as a presentation technology. Are you guys clear with my point? Right. So what is the purpose of Spring Boot Starter Web Dependency? To develop a web application by using boot. That will provide the server also. Which is server we will get by default? Tomcat server. What is the next one? Dev Tools. What is the purpose of Dev Tools? What is the purpose of Dev Tools? To restart the server. When we make some code changes, server should be restarted. For that we will go for Dev Tools. What is the third one? Tomcat embed Jasper. What is the purpose of that? When you are using JSP, then we need that dependency. Are you clear? Good. Next one, after completion of this, we need to create controller class. Create controller class with the required methods. Create controller class with required methods. Now, I want to write one method to display welcome message. I want to write one method to display greet message, right? Whatever the methods you want, you write them in the controller class, right? Now, here guys, to represent our class as a controller, there is an annotation called @controller. Earlier we used @component. What is the purpose of @component? That is used to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. Now I want to represent my Java class as a controller. For that, we will use one annotation called @controller. Create a controller class with required methods. Then third point, map controller methods to URL pattern. Whatever the method you are writing, that controller method should be mapped to URL pattern. Get request method, post request method, like that. You need to map your controller method to URL pattern. Then after, create presentation file with the presentation logic. With the presentation logic, that is called view. Create view file with the presentation logic. Currently I am using what? JSP as a presentation. Then fifth point, configure view resolver in application.properties file. Configure your application, configure your view resolver in the application.properties file. That's it. Run the application and test it. Run the application and test it. Got it? Fine, good. Read the steps now. I want to build first web application with a Spring Boot. So what is the first step? Create Spring starter project with below dependencies. What are those? Spring Boot starter web. Next one, dev tools. Third one, embed Jasper. Next, create controller class with required methods, right? How many methods I can create in a controller? Any number of methods I can create. How to represent my class as a controller class? By using @controller. After writing our methods, we need to map our methods to URL pattern. We need to map our methods to URL pattern. And fourth one, create a view file with the presentation logic. What is the meaning of view file? What is the meaning of view file? UI page. That is called UI page. Then configure view resolver in the properties file. Then finally run the application and test our application. Perfect. Shall we start the development? Yes. Good. Go to here, IDE, file, new, Spring Starter project. Now we are creating our first WebMVC application. First WebMVC application we are creating. App 1, Maven. Packaging type. Earlier, what is the packaging type? jar. Now what is the packaging type? Var. Maven, Java version as 11. Remaining things are good. Only thing is, remember, packaging type I am creating as var. Click on next. Boot version. Web dependency. Spring web dependency. The moment when I select a web dependency, what it is telling, can you read it? Build web including RESTful applications using Spring MVC, uses Apache Tomcat as the default embedded container. You can develop web application, you can develop RESTful application, and you are getting Tomcat as an embedded container. Along with this, I need to go for dev tools. Spring Boot dev tools. Select that. What is the purpose of dev tools? Read it. Read it. Provides fast application restarts, live reload, configuration for enhanced development experience. Okay. Next one is embed Jasper. Is it available here? No, we need to add it manually. Okay. So web dependency, dev tools, I'm able to select. Click on next, click on finish. Project is getting created. Yeah. Go to pom.xml. Yes. Can you see this? Version 2.7.10, Java 11, then web starter and dev tools. What is this? What is this? Starter Tomcat. Did I select it or it coming automatically? When you select web starter, Tomcat starter also will come. Then starter test available for unit testing. Leave this. Now I need to add one more dependency. What is that? Tomcat embed Jasper. Where I can search for the dependencies? mvnrepository.com. Then search for Tomcat embed Jasper. Tomcat embed Jasper. Click on this. Go to stable version 10.17. Yep. Take this. Copy in the pom.xml. Paste in the pom.xml. After this, I'm going to keep this dependency. Version not required. Just group ID org.apache.tomcat.embed. Artifact ID Tomcat embed Jasper. I have added my dependency. With this, my first step is completed. Create the project and add the dependency. This dependency you need to search from mvnrepository.com. Got it? These dependencies you can select at the time of boot application creation. Now, second step. What is the second step? Create a controller class with the required methods. Go here. Now, go to this. Start class is created. And as I have selected var package, it created one more class called servlet initializer. This servlet initializer will load the classes which are required for our web application execution. Just ignore that. Now let me create one class. I'm creating a class called message controller. This class I'm keeping inside controller package. You see, I'm following the package naming convention. My start class available in the in.ashok.it, and here I'm taking base package name in.ashok.it. Then controller is available in the controller package. So this is a normal Java class. I want to represent this class as a controller. For that, we will go for a annotation called @controller. What is this? Stereotype annotation. It is used to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. So to represent our Java class as a controller, I'm using one annotation called @controller. Then I need to write methods in that class. Right? Public. What is the return type of the controller? Model and view. That is a predefined class in the Spring Web. Model and view. Get welcome message. I'm writing my method with a name called get welcome message. Now, method return type is model and view object. MAV is equal to new model and view object. Return model and view object. Got it? So this is my controller method. So when my requirement is, when somebody send a request for this method, I want to display welcome message. Now, here I want to send the data from controller to UI. Whenever a request comes to the controller controller should send the model and view object. What is a model? What is a model? It will represent the data in the form of key value. What is a view? Logical file name. Now, MAV dot add object key comma value. My key is message. My value is some text. I want to display like this. Okay, fine. This is model which is used to store the data in the form of key and value. Next, I want to send this response to the presentation file. This is my response, key and value. Now, where it has to display that message? MAV dot set view name. What is your file name? In which file this message should be displayed? I'm using JSP technology. What should be the name of that JSP? I'm giving the JSP name as message. I'm giving the JSP name as some message that is equal to message.jsp. But does my controller know that that is a JSP? My controller only know file name. That file can be JSP file or that file can be timeleaf also. Are you guys clear? Now here I'm writing a method. That method is returning model and view object. In the model, I'm setting the data and I'm setting the view file. Now, the next step, map controller method to URL pattern. I will map it to a GET request by using get mapping with a /welcome. /welcome. When anybody send a request to my application with the /welcome as a URL pattern, it will display message JSP with this message. Got it? Fine. Similarly, can I create one more method? Can I create one more method? Yes. Now, see here. I want to develop one more method. What is the return type of the method? What is the return type? Model and view. The return type is model and view. Get some greet message. Get some greet message. Now, create model and view object. MAV is equal to new model and view. Return model and view object. Set the data and set the view file. Okay. MAV dot add object. Key comma value. Here also I'm giving the key as a message, but the text is good evening. I'm changing the text here. Good evening. Then set the view file. MAV dot set view name. Same name I am setting. View file is only one. When you send the request to the first method, it will return the view file as a message view. When you send the request to the second method also, it will return the view name as a message. So I want to map to URL. That is get mapping /greet. Remember, every method should have unique URL pattern. First method URL pattern is /welcome. Second method URL pattern is /greet. So both methods are returning which page? Message page. Okay. Now here project is created, controllers are created, map it to URL patterns also. What is the fourth step? Create the view file with the presentation logic. What should be the name of my view file? Go to this project. In this, we have main web app. Can you guys check this project? Here, this is my project. In this project, there is a SRC. In this SRC main, in that we have a web app folder. Our presentation files, we are going to create inside that web app folder. We are going to create the presentation files in the web app folder. Right click on the web app, new folder. I'm creating another folder with a name called views. Created another folder with a name called views. In that views, let me create new other JSP. I'm trying to create a JSP. Available or not available? JSP not available. Okay. Now I need to create a file. New file. I will to give that as a message.jsp. Alright. Open with the text editor. I opened that as a text editor. Then my JSP page is opened. Here inside this JSP page, I need to access my message. In order to access that message, I'm going for expression language $of message. What is the key I'm returning from the controller? What is the key? Message. What is the value? Welcome to here also. What is the key? Message. What is the value? Good evening. So now, in order to get the value, I need to access the key. My key name is message. I'm giving that as a $of message. $of message. But actually, in this IDE, JSP support is not there. To render this JSP, we need to have some JSP directive. We will see. If it is not working, we will change that. Then after creating this JSP file, what is the next step? Configure view resolver. What is the duty of the view resolver? To identify where our view files are available. Now go to application.properties. Yes, configure view resolver. Spring.mvc.view.prefix. Where our presentation files available? In the views directory. Now, what is the extension of that? U.suffix is equal to .jsp. Prefix represents the location of your view files. Suffix represents the extension of the view file. With this extension, view resolver will understand that it is a JSP file. Are you clear? Now, with this, we are done with all the setup. Now, what is the final step? Run the application and test it. Okay. Refresh. Run our project. Run as boot application. Now, I started my application. Now, can you check it? Can you check it? Tomcat is started or not started? Tomcat is started on the port number 8080. Okay. Go to browser, localhost colon 8080/welcome. Yes. Am I able to access my welcome message? Yes. I'm able to access my welcome message. Similarly, let us go for 8080/greet. Am I able to access that message? So that means my web application is working or web application is not working. Web application is working. Now, let me go here and change some code. Let me go here and change our code. Now here, hi, welcome to Ashok IT. I changed my message text. I am saving that file. Okay. Let me clear the console. Let me save that file. When I save that file, what happened? Now resend the request to that. Resend the request to the welcome method. Latest code is added, changed or not? So am I restarting the server or server is restarted automatically? Server is restarted automatically. How server got restarted? Because of dev tools. And some people are saying that what people will do is they will run the application. After some time, again they will right click. They will run as boot application. Now see, when I run the project once again, what happened? Application failed to start. What it is saying? Port 8080 was already in use. That means your application already running. You are trying to rerun the same application with the same port number. You can't do that. Whenever you get a problem like this, address already in use, port already in use. You observe here there is one icon available to clear the console. Okay, there is one icon is available to clear the console. If you click on that, your server which is running will be displayed. Now then you need to stop the server. After stopping the server, again you can right click run as boot application. Now again you can start your server. Your server is started. For example, I don't want to go with 8080. I want to change the Tomcat server port number. Here you can change that server.port is equal to 9090. Server.port is equal to 9090. Clear the console, refresh your project, right click, run as boot application. Now you observe the server is running on which port number? Server is running on the port number 9090. Now go to the project. Here localhost colon 9090/welcome. Am I able to access? Now localhost colon 9090/greet. Yes, we are able to access. Now if you observe in the URL pattern, project name is available or project name not available? Project name is available or project name not available? Project name not available. If you go for servlet, project name will be available in the URL, but in the Spring Boot, by default, project name will not be available in the URL. Sir, I want to configure project name in the URL. I want to configure project name in the URL. For that, you need to add one property in the properties file that is called servlet.context_path. You need to go for a property called context-path. server.servlet.context_path/sbi or else /some Ashok ID like this. I'm adding context path in the properties file. Now let us start our application. Refresh, run as boot application. Okay, my application started. Now you check what is the context path. So right here, what is the port number of the server? Tomcat server started on the port number 9090 with the context path as Ashok IT. Now go here. Now go to our browser. Now let us try to access localhost colon 9090/Ashok ID/welcome. Now I am able to access with the project name in the URL. Similarly, let's go for greet. How to access that? Localhost colon 9090/Ashok IT/greet. Now I'm able to access that. So here by default, Spring Boot will not take any context path. Whatever the context path you want, you can keep in the configuration file. I'm keeping my view resolver. I'm keeping my port number. I'm keeping my context path. Port number mandatory or optional? Optional. If I don't configure port number, what will happen? 8080 will be considered. Context path is mandatory or optional? If I remove the context path, then directly 8080/welcome, 8080/greet I can access. Right? Good. Now look at this. Look at the steps. Is it difficult or is it easy? What is the first step I have done? Create starter project with the dependency. I have selected web starter. I have selected dev tools and I have added Tomcat embed Jasper. Okay. Now let us see, for example, some people will not add that Tomcat embed Jasper. Suppose assume that I am not adding Tomcat Jasper dependency. I removed it. I removed the Tomcat embed Jasper. So my project is stopped. Refresh. Now port number I am not changing. Context path also I am not adding. Right click, run as boot application. You can check what is the port number of our application. 8080. Any context path available or not available? Context path not available. Now let me try to access my application. See my browser. Let me try to access my application. Okay. So now this is my browser. What I have done? What I have done, guys? I removed Tomcat embed Jasper dependency. Okay. Now localhost colon 8080/welcome. Okay. Go to new tab. Localhost colon 8080/welcome. Send the request. What happened? Am I getting any response or my welcome page is downloaded? My welcome page is downloaded. So what is the meaning of that? What is the meaning of that? Why my page is downloaded? Here our boot Tomcat server, embedded server, not able to recognize what is JSP. So if you don't add the embed Jasper, your JSP file will be downloaded. It will not render on the browser. Okay. If you add your JSP Jasper dependency, then only it will process your JSP file. Otherwise, it will not process your JSP file. Now, let us go to the browser. Let us send a request. Localhost colon 8080/greet. Now also downloaded. Whenever you change some dependency, you need to stop and start the server. Okay. Let us refresh, stop it, run as boot application. Clear the console. Application started. Go to browser. Localhost colon 8080/welcome. It is rendered. Now localhost colon 8080/greet. I'm able to access that. One controller, two methods are available. One controller, two methods are available. What is the common thing here? Both are returning the same key and same view. Key is the same, message is different. Whenever you send a request to the /welcome, this method will execute and it is returning model and view. What is the model and view? Model represents data in the form of key and value. What is the view? Logical file name. What is the logical file name? Message. Where is that message? In the views folder. What is the technology of that message? .jsp. It is a JSP file. Good. Look at the steps. Yeah. So here, guys, what are our observations? What are our observations? How to create our class as a controller? To represent Java class as controller, we are using what? @controller annotation. And the second point, controller methods we need to map up with HTTP methods using unique URL pattern. Using unique URL pattern. If I want to bind to GET request, then I should go for what? @get mapping. If I want to go for POST request, then I need to go for post mapping. And next one. Now, Apache Tomcat is coming as default embedded container. What is the port number of that container? Apache Tomcat is coming as default embedded container. Observe this. To represent a Java class as a controller, we are using controller annotation. Controller methods we need to map with the HTTP methods using unique URL pattern. If I want to map my method to get request, then I will go for get mapping. If I want to map my method to post request, I will go for post mapping. Apache Tomcat is coming as a default embedded container. Embedded container port number is 8080. Can we change that port number? Yes. How can we change that? We can change that port number using application dot properties file. What is the key? Server dot port is equal to some 9090. So by default, context path will be available in the Spring Boot. No, by default in Spring Boot web apps will not have context path. What is the context path? Project name is called as context path. We can add context path using application dot properties file. Okay, what is the property for that? Context path server dot servlet dot context path. Like this we need to add it. If you add the context path, you need to use that in the URL pattern. By default, context path will not be available. You no need to add that. So to represent Java class, we are using @controller. Controller methods we are mapping to HTTP methods, get mapping and post mapping. As of now, what we have used? Only get mapping. Apache Tomcat is coming as a default embedded container. Embedded container port number is 8080. We can change that port number using properties file. What is the port number we can configure? Anyone, server.port. By default, context path will not be available. Context path we can add like this. So DevTools dependency is used to restart server. DevTools dependency is used to restart our server when we make code changes. If you make any code change, then our server will restart automatically because of this DevTools. Good. Guys, by default, JSP file is not coming. Then what I have done? I created a file with .jsp extension. How to open the JSP here? Right click, open with text editor, src main web app views. I'm right clicking on this. I am opening that with the, either you can go with the system editor means VS Code is opening. Right click on this, open with some text editor. Then I can open the JSP. I'm writing $of_message in the curly brace. What is the $of_message in the curly brace? That is called expression language, which is used to access our message based on the key. Who is sending that key? Controller. How controller is sending that key? By using model and view, key comma value. By using this key, I'm able to access this value. Are you guys clear? Good. Look at the controller. Should I give the code? Not required. Nothing. Just I created one class with a name called message controller. Message controller.java. Okay. Now here I am having message.jsp. Where I created this message.jsp, guys, the location is very important. Under the main, we are having a web app. Under the web app, we are having I created a views folder. In that views folder, I created my message.jsp. Okay. So the .jsp file, I'm just adding $of message. Just I am adding $of message. And here I'm having my application.properties. So what configuration I have done in the application properties? My view resolver configuration. View resolver context path. I'm not writing that. Okay. Hash is for the comments. Now I'm just writing here view resolver. Prefix is a /views. Suffix is a .jsp. Clear with this? Yeah. If you want the diagram, I can give you in a Word document. Spring Web MVC. Web MVC architecture. In the Web MVC architecture, we are having several components. So this is the diagram. This is called as Web MVC architecture. Correct. Now, in this, I'm creating our project folder structure. I will give you for your understanding purpose, where I am creating which classes and where my view files are available. Here my start class will be available and the initializer is available. Yep. I have given project folder structure also, guys. So look at that. Anybody having any questions? It is rendered, right? Styles, that we will see that part. I will check that, sir. CSS, why is not recognizing? I will check that. Okay. Anyone having any questions, guys? Online people, any questions? Guys, keep quiet. Let them ask some questions. Online students, you can ask your question now. You can unmute your mic and you can ask. Keep quiet. I should not listen any voice from here.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi.
Sir, just show me that message.jsp file, how this configure.
It is just a
Yes.
simple JSP. I'm accessing the key by using expression language. Right click on the views, new file. When you are creating a file, you can give extension as .jsp. That's it.
JSP.
Yes, that
Sir,
JSP
sir,
file will be
Sir,
created.
in controller class, sir, just open controller class.
Controller class will return the view name. That's it.
Okay, set view name as a message. Okay,
Correct.
sir.
That if we are having more than one key, so we'll have to make 2 pages.
No. You can send multiple keys. Multiple keys you can access in the same page. Key should be different, right? Multiple keys you can access in the same page. Got it?
Hello, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
hi.
sir.
Nishan this side.
Yes, sir. Please tell me.
Sir, if we are creating a jar package instead of war package, what happened here, sir?
If you create jar instead of var, then you will not get this web app directory. You need to create web app directory manually. Samjha?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi.
Sir, this Tomcat embed Jasper dependency only needed when we develop
Can you come
JSP
again?
base.
I can't hear you.
Sir,
Guys,
this
How
Jasper
many times I need to
dependency.
tell you? Keep quiet. Otherwise, you get out. Class is completed. Tell me.
Sir, this Jasper dependency only needed when we develop
Yes,
JSP
Jasper dependency
page.
needed only when you are using JSP as a presentation. Otherwise, it is not required.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Next one.
Sir, in real time, like JSP is used right now, or like by
In the real time,
using-
JSP not used. We are not going to focus much on the JSP. Just it is a first example, right? I explained the JSP. So in future, we will work with the timelines. Got it?
So using timelines also we can connect to Angular or React front-end technology. Means if we are using front-end as React or Angular, means
Okay.
at that case how we are going to connect?
That I will explain. How to use front end as Angular or React, I will discuss in the class. I will show one example on that. Got it?
So my question is, in that case, do we need that JSP or
Not
that
required.
time?
Not required.
Okay.
If you are using Angular or React as a front end, then JSP not required. Time leaf also not required. Got it?
Yes.
Yep. Next one. Any questions for offline students? No? Good. Thank you. I want you to practice this before coming to tomorrow. So next 1 week, we are going to work with the WebMVC only. WebMVC just started, not completed. How to deal with multiple details, how to deal with multiple keys, how to deal with multiple controllers, how to develop the forms, how to send the data from controller to UI, UI to controller, lot of stuff we need to understand. That will continue from tomorrow. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hello, Ashok sir, Wilson here.
Yeah, hi.
Sir, actually, I pinged you regarding the thesis topic. Do you remember?
Sorry?
I messaged you on WhatsApp regarding the thesis topic. It is not about the class, like the thesis.
I will check that, sir. I will check that and I will update you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.